All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started. So we actually have all of our youth, so thank you all for being here. And we're really happy to share some of the experiences that we had when we were in Puerto Rico. So to give you an understanding of what to expect, we've seen each other for about 5 minutes since the trip. So this slide, I put together some pictures of our visit, but I have only seen them. Our entire team has not seen them. So this is not a formal presentation other than this is my brain trying to formalize topics to cover for all of you. If you have questions during this, please feel free to stop and ask us. Team, if you have something that you want to say and I don't see you, just let me know so we can pass the mic. This was the first time that we've done a mission trip where we traveled somewhere, even though we were still technically not in another country. We were on a plane and very immersed in a culture that was not what we had been. And it was all of you in this room helped us get there, whether it was fundraising, supporting the fundraisers, paying for your children's way, airfare, and things like that. So we know we could not have done this trip without all of you there. And I know many of you, while we were there, were praying for us. So I always love coming back to share this because I feel like it brings it full circle to be able to help share some of the experiences with you who we couldn't have done this trip without all of you. So, okay, so when I flip this one, so you guys can see a map now? Can you? Oh, perfect. All right. So this is just a map of where we were in Puerto Rico. So we flew into San Juan. We stayed kind of in the middle there. It says Puerto Rican Christian School. We stayed in a school. There was actually no hot water anywhere in Puerto Rico. We all had to bring our mattresses with us. So many of us slept on like the 1-inch thick camping pads on a linoleum floor in the school. Thankfully, the school was air conditioned. So during the week that we served, we were there with another mission group who was not staying in an air conditioned space. And I think having air conditioning helped us sleep the little bit that we did sleep. So even though we were kind of roughing it, that having air conditioning was huge. If you look down and to the left, it says Tail Alta. That's where we served. It should have been about a 20-minute drive from where we stayed to where we served. About 2 months before we visited, there was a landslide that washed away the road that kind of took us over the pass that we needed to get there. So each day it took us closer to 40 minutes, I would say, to get to the site where we served. I asked somebody, like, how long do you think it'll be for you to get the road back, and they just kind of laughed. They're like, it'll be a while, So there's no, I thought about, like, our I-95 in Philadelphia fell, and it's probably already back up. That is not the case in a major pass-through in Puerto Rico. So the majority of our days, we went to Teo Alta. We were there, we got there on a Saturday. We were there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday afternoon, we went and visited a beach. So if you see down by the coast where there's 2 spots, we did spend about an hour in an old San Juan, which was a very cool but touristy area where we could buy some shop a little bit, and then we hit the beach there and then had dinner there that night. Friday morning, we flew back home. So while there is beachfront that we saw very, very little of that. The majority of our time was spent in sort of inland, if you will. Okay, next slide. So this was a really beautiful sign in the town where we served. There was definitely a downtown area. We drove through it every day that we went, but we didn't actually stop in it. I would say once we hit this sign, it was about 10 minutes into a more mountainous, kind of up in the hills, definitely a more rural area. So even though there's like a city in Teo Alta, it was definitely more of a village feel to where we traveled. And yes. Yes, so we went with, there were a total of 20 people on the trip. 8 of us from our congregation, 6 youth, 2 adults. The other 12 people were 2 youth and 10 adults from 2 other congregations. Both churches had 2 drivers. So for the 20 of us, we had like 2 15-passenger vans that we all stayed together the whole week. Almost immediately on the first day, they were like, don't worry about driving, we can drive. And I was like, great, because I really didn't want to drive there. I had done all the tests they had us do, but I'd actually forgotten to fill out one PDF form to send in, so they hadn't run the background checks that they needed for me to be able to drive. So I was like technically not allowed to drive when we got there. It was such a blessing, and so like I was scrambling when I first got there saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't do this, like I will fix this. And they were like, we've all talked and we feel very comfortable driving, you don't need to drive. And so there were so many ways that the other 2 churches that came supported our group, and driving was one of the many ways. So like while we were going, we could all be in the van and we could talk, we could connect. I could follow up with people, and it was one thing that we didn't have to do. But so the roads were fairly good up until you got into the more village areas. And then there were definitely only one can get through, and you'd have to back out. And so the roads, the further away from the developed areas you got, became a little bit rougher. Okay, so the next slide. Did I show the next slide? Is it still on the sign? Okay. So this is pictures of some of the damage that was still visible from Hurricane Maria. So Hurricane Maria struck the island in September of 2017. And 6 years later, they're still rebuilding. So the middle picture, that was us walking from the site. Do you see, it's hard to tell, but there's a telephone pole. Do you see the state of the wires coming from that? That's like the utility company's work in Puerto Rico where we were. So I mean, like there was actually a road that we were going under. I don't know if you guys remember this. I was so afraid the van was gonna literally like take down the wire, because it was like, I'm like, can the tall van, can the tall van fit under here? Because we did, but it was very just put together in a way that we would not see here, right? And so power was, I think, something that when you have lines that look like that, I don't know if it looked like that before the hurricane, but it's looked like that since the hurricane, and power outages are common when that's, when it kind of looks like that. So I think, okay, so go to the next slide. Right after the hurricane, this is a plywood house, and I mean, you can see the car kind of as a scale for size, so it is small. Immediately after the hurricane, I don't know who, they didn't know who, so I don't know if it was government assistance or if it was a company, but you could pay $400 and have a plywood home erected so you had something to live in. 6 years later, there are still families. I mean, and there's a dog in front of that. There was a family living in that house. A lot of them, there were those plywood structures and then a big vacant lot next to it. So they were waiting to rebuild a home afterwards. And we didn't see a ton of those, but that was one of the homes that Pastor Elvis pointed out to us, like, this is what people were living in after the hurricane, because we had not, people's homes were destroyed. This was better than nothing, but it would definitely not be very comfortable to live in. What? 1 room, no bathroom. So very like temporary housing, but to some families, this was still, this was still the case after 6 years. So a lot of the work that we did there was rebuilding. When the day we got there, he took us through a tour of the village, and he showed us, he being Pastor Elvis, which we will talk about very soon. There were 5 homes that were in different stages of construction, and so all of the work that we did or were being asked to do was to help work on these homes, to build them and get people more permanent housing after the hurricane. All right, so I've done a lot of talking, but we're moving on to a section now called The People. And one of the things that was very different, so we used a company called Praying Pelican Missions this trip. When we've used YouthWorks in the past, our service partner would put us with a different mission organization every day, or in some cases every half day. So we would meet people that were helping their community, but we'd spend 3 to 5, 6 hours with them at best. In the Praying Pelican model, we had the same service partner, the same site, the same people we were serving with the entire week. And so what really the time and the structure difference caused us to develop deep relationships with people. So when I think about this trip from 5 years from now, or when I think the most about what we remember, I think all of us, every night we would get together and say, where do we see God? And it was always in the people that we met. So there's a lot of slides on the people, and this is where I will stop talking and I will pass the mic as we go through the people. I did not put pictures of every person that was impactful to us. So if you want to talk about somebody that we don't have up there, just let's do that, okay? All right. So next slide. Graydon, you said you wanted to take.
All right. Pastor Elvis was I guess we could say, like, tour guide for us. He was always showing us around, showing what we need to do. And he was a very fun guy. He was always wearing a Captain American shirt, and he was always wearing a superhero shirt and like a hat always, and like he was always just around, just to help out. And he would also he took us to his church on the last day. Was it his church? It was his church, his own church, and it was a very like involved church, like mass, I guess you could say, because he would like bring people up and he would like let them talk, and then we'd all like sing and then clap and stuff. It was very like everyone was involved in this church. He was a really good guy. So.
Anybody else want to say anything about Pastor Elvis? Wait. So one of the things, can you just? I want to pull your. Thank you. He was sort of like the glue to the community because he was a pastor. We worshiped with his congregation in the church that was established in Teo Alta. About 10 minutes away, he was building another church where he was spreading, like God had called him to kind of continue building up the community. And so everywhere we went in this village, everybody knew him. And he kept referring to our team as missionaries, which, like, as many times as I've done mission trips now with our congregation, they've never called us that. And it was really impactful for him to call us that and for us to hear, like, he's presenting us in this community as, we have 5 houses that need built, and we don't know where we're going to get the supplies, and we don't know how we're going to get the manpower. But look, I prayed, and we asked for help, and now here are these missionaries here in our neighborhood helping you. And so one of the things that he liked to do was visibly have us in the community and be able to, I'm going to call it knock on doors, but technically we did not knock on doors because we learned in Puerto Rico that is rude and aggressive. So if you want to call somebody in their house, you have to stand in there outside and say, hola, hello, like you talk to the house until they come out. You don't knock.
And windows are always open.
And windows are always open, so I guess it makes a little more sense in that climate. But he I've never seen a person more confident of faith in the Holy Spirit. And it was like, like the one day, what happened to the one piece of equipment the one day? The mixer stopped working. So we were laying a cement foundation using a batch, very rustic cement mixer where you had to like shovel in dirt or sand and rocks and put quickcrete in and water, and it broke. And we're like, we can't make concrete without a mixer. And he's like, I don't know. Like we went to lunch. He's like, I don't know, but it'll work out. It'll work out. And like by after lunch, that had been fixed, and he'd brought another mixer. So like we doubled our capacity because he, so it was like he wasn't a detail person, which for me, I am a detail person. It was interesting to see how much faith he had in, like in just how things worked. And I mean, we were there, but there was another mission organization that had about 40 people that were also there. So we had 60 people on these 5 sites during the week that we were there working on these houses. So I definitely consider him kind of like the glue to their community and just the rebuilding. All right, I'm handing this to you because you'll see, flip this side.
Did you flip it?
Does it say Hasael now?
Okay, so Hasael on I think it's the right or the left, it's on the right, is his family. His father was the man that cooked for us the entire week, and we didn't find that out until one of the last days we were there. But we were building his house. The cement that we were pouring the entire time was this family's house. And if you look on the other side, you'll see me playing with a little boy with a rolled up piece of garbage that he decided was a ball because we didn't have a ball. His name was Hasael, and I felt a real connection to him. He didn't speak any English, and by the time we left, he spoke a little English. So for those of you that know me, I love children, and I want to work with children for the rest of my life. And I am not great with the manual labor, so Pastor Elvis brought in his nephew to play with me, and we played for probably the entire work day. I didn't do anything but that. And the last day, I think it was the last day on the site, he took us door to door to meet his friends, and we got together in the church, me and Charlotte and Amanda, with all the children from the neighborhood, and we had coloring books and games and stuff like that. So, hide and seek, yeah. So that is what I come back saying the most impactful thing for me was the children and being able to build such a strong relationship without hardly any words. So.
And so this slide is a little bit more. So when I say that, and I honestly don't know Hasael's parents' names. I don't think I ever got their names, but this man was like, there were about 60 missionaries that would meet in this community room an hour a day and eat lunch. So the middle picture is kind of like what it looked like. There would be a tray of, like a banquet sort of catering trays, and they would just bring them full of food. And one meal was better than the next. I mean, he had such a gift for cooking. It was amazing. And you could see that they maybe couldn't build their house, but they could feed people, and so they used their gifts while we were using our gifts, and it just complemented each other so well. And I mean, Hasael was just such a light because it's hard work. So we were really close to the equator. It was the first 2 days were triple-digit feels like heat. And I've never felt heat like that. And so we're outside building a foundation to a house in triple-digit weather. I was concerned for our personal safety, you know, making sure we're drinking water and everything, but also too, it's like you just get discouraged because it's hot and you're tired. We are not professional home builders, right? So we've never done this, and we have so much faith from like you're here and you're helping and you know what you're doing, and having the neighborhood people that would come and just say hi and stop and like help us get a smile back on our face was invaluable.
So one thing that I was really excited for at the start of this trip, we were told to have no expectations for the work that we'd be doing, and that as we met the pastor, he would take our personalities into consideration and find work for us. And I felt like everybody found something that was valuable to them. We had our construction guys, and we had, I don't know what you two did, but you did something.
They did construction on the other side.
Right. Everybody, yeah, I genuinely don't know what you did, but everybody found something that was like right for them, and everybody felt like they were included and accepted and making a difference in their own way. So
I would agree. I mean, so you guys put the rest of the rebar in around the foundation, because we started, once we doubled the mixer capacity, we were pouring cement maybe faster than the rebar was ready. And so they were working ahead of where the cement was going in, they had like the horizontal rebar and the stuff on the corners. I'm going way out of my comfort zone here, but like every 10 inches or every foot?
Every 15 inches.
Every 15 inches, there had to be horizontal members that had to be like tied to the rebar so it wouldn't move. And they worked ahead and did that, which like, it was pretty awesome. So even though we weren't shoveling heavy things into the mixer and like pouring cement, what you could do, you did do, and we used that. Okay, next picture. Oh, Bo. Do one of you guys want to talk about Bo? Henry? Thank you.
For me, the connection with Bo was like really different from anybody else on the mission trip, because Bo really couldn't, I don't know if he couldn't speak any English or he could only speak a little bit of English, but like I still found a connection with him, like regardless of that gap. One thing that like I noticed about our like conversations, well, if you could even really call them conversations, is that over the course of the week, the language barrier kind of disappeared. Like we were both like making efforts to communicate, but like over time, you just kind of knew what the other person was saying or what they meant. Even with like, even if you were like asking to like for complex like you were asking him like a question that required like at least some knowledge of Spanish, Bo just kind of understood. And I don't know, it just kind of spoke to me that even despite having a huge language barrier, we were able to form a tight connection and a tight bond.
So Bo was a construction worker that had taken it on himself to start rebuilding these houses, and the church that was 10 minutes away that the pastor was working on building, Bo had started on his own from scratch. Like, he was the mastermind construction worker. He taught all of us what we were doing on the site, and he didn't speak, I think, a word of English. Like,
Clearly,
we'd
most
say
of
yes
us
and
had
no.
no experience, right? So
right, he taught me in,
and have the patience
right,
and he was so calming, and he gave us confidence to do the things that we were able to do.
yeah, he taught me and Charlotte how to put in rebar with like grunts. He was like, yeah.
And the picture that you see there, the house with is that metal siding that you see as the roof? That's actually Bo's house. So he lives there. This man knows how to build an entire church. So he is not using his gifts to better himself. He literally was living in a metal house. Do you see to the left how there's that like 2-story cement? That's his land. He was in the process, one of the construction sites that we worked on during the week, he was building a 4-unit apartment complex on his land because there were 4 families that were homeless and he wanted to help them. So instead of, and I don't know, that's what they told us. So I don't know if he's gonna move into one of those units or if he's gonna, but it's like literally, he has the skills and the ability and he's serving others instead of himself. And that just was such a powerful example to me of, Jeremiah said this. So Jeremiah Wagner was the other adult that went on the trip. He works full-time at Crestfield, so he was not here today because he's at camp. But he said that this trip felt like what it would be like to live like when Jesus was on earth, because everybody was taking care of each other. Everybody, like we all worked together to leverage our gifts. It was such a unique experience. And that picture of where Bo lives and what he was capable of helped, in my mind, visually show how selfless he was and how giving he was of our time. I mean, we were, like Henry explained, I mean, we couldn't convey the communication that could happen without being able to use words was definitely, to me, the power of the Holy Spirit working through him to help us and to communicate. Okay, next slide. Kemp, you want to take this one? Felipe? Do you want to talk about him a little bit?
All right, so Felipe was the other on-site hand at the cement job site, and he would basically just stay there and make sure we mix the cement right, so we wouldn't have it like too watery, because they really like their cement watery and rocky and not a smoother consistency, and that was kind of weird for me, but.
So we had all sort of, or maybe I should say, I had assumed that Felipe was kind of like Bo. I mean, when Pastor Elvis was introducing us to people, he told us that Bo was a construction worker and that he had built the church that we had toured. So we knew that about him. So we kind of just assumed, I assumed Felipe was of that same genre. Well, so Wednesday night, I think it was Wednesday night, it was Thursday night, we went to worship at Pastor Elvis's church. We walk into church, and Felipe is their, like, worship leader. And I'm like, I go to Jeremiah, I'm like, I think that's Felipe. And he's like, there's no way that's Felipe, because he was all cleaned up and, like, looking like he was going to church. The guy, it's hard to see, but the guy with the hat on to the left of the mixer is Felipe on the construction site. So he cleans up nice, but it's like he looked completely differently. So, and then I'm just like, I'm telling you, I think that's him. And so finally, like, he introduced himself. We're like, it is him. And he literally was, again, walking the walk, right? Like, we love this community. We want this community to be rebuilt. And we are out here making that happen to help partner with the missionaries that were able to come in. So then after worship, and so you can sort of see, maybe you can't see it in that picture, but he would speak in Spanish, and then there was a translator there. So the 3 women that were sort of hosting us from PPM were all bilingual. So one of them would stand and he would say some sentences, and then one of them would translate it for us so we could follow along. But then afterwards, one of the other adults that were on the mission trip from another church with us, he's a drummer. So, like, he saw a drum set on their stage, and he's like, oh, I got to go drum. So he started drumming, and then Felipe just picked up a drum and started, and they had this, like, jam session after worship, just kind of hanging out. So Felipe was a man of many talents, also extremely patient, and, like, we would take breaks. Some of us, I'm looking at you, Kemp, took more breaks than they wanted to because we made them. But like they didn't take any breaks, like literally all day. I mean, they worked and worked and worked. So if we were there, they were there, and they were more dedicated and just amazing to see their talents. And it was so impactful to me to like worship with somebody that had also been helping us help the community all week. Okay, next slide. Anybody want to talk about Che and Danielle? I know, if Jeremiah was here, he would have loved to talk about them.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So Jeremiah had, he spent an entire day with Shay and Daniel, and I only spent I think 2, maybe 3 hours with Daniel and Shay. But in that time, I don't know, we formed like a really tight bond. He's really good at playing basketball. It's like, I was like sweating and like I couldn't keep up with him. And like, I don't know, to see, he just had so much energy and so much like passion, and even whenever he like lost to people who were on the trip who were playing, honestly, probably too hard against him, he took it, like he wasn't like mad. He took it way better than I would have taken it if I was his age. He was just really, I don't know. He was like, it's like he understood. Like he also barely spoke any, he kind of spoke a little bit of English, like rudimentary, but like, again, you could like, you just kind of understood him, especially if you were there. Like, a lot of the time, since he was like one of the only kids that spoke English, he would serve as like a translator for some of the kids, and they would love to like show me like bike skills that they like pulled off. Like one of the kids who was there, who was like his friend, who was also great at playing basketball, like could do a wheelie, and he loved showing that off. He loved like getting Daniel to like tell me to like pay attention before he like, I don't know, flips his bike off of like a staircase. They were daredevils, definitely. But again, like even with like little knowledge of English, you could still kind of like talk with them. Like you could have a full conversation and not understand what each other, like what you were saying, really, if that makes any sense. Great.
So those kids just showed up one day. I don't know where they came from really. I think they just like, do you know where they came from?
No, their house. I mean,
Well, like who like brought them there? Like that's.
no, they lived a block away from where we were working.
Okay, so I guess they just like noticed we were there, and they kind of just like walked down and just was like trying to make conversation with us, and at one point they just started working. And I was kind of confused. I was like, all right, and I think it was Shay. She was shoveling like tiny bits of rocks because she wasn't like the strongest, obviously, because she was 12, and so she was shoveling a small amount of rocks, and it was so fun to see her help. And then Daniel helped Jeremiah move like a whole pile of sand, and to bring it to us because we were running out of sand on the last day, and they would just keep working, and like it was just awesome to see. And me and Shay had a secret handshake that me and Jeremiah made, and she saw us do it, and then it was our handshake. And then Daniel would play. He made up this game. I don't know what it was called. Do you remember? He wanted to throw a dodgeball at us, so he made up a game. We stand in the middle of a court, like a basketball court, and he said the thrower cannot run, but everyone else can in this square. And he would throw the ball at us, and we'd either like, if he'd miss us, he would run after and go get it. And it was like a far run. Like it was like in 100-degree weather, I would not have ran. I would have like slowly like waddled over there, but like he ran like all the time. It was impressive. They're like fun kids.
So that top picture is me and Amanda and Shay in the very front going door to door trying to find neighborhood kids.
And half of Charlotte.
And half of
Oh, a little bit of Charlotte's arm. We went door to door trying to find neighborhood kids that were friends of Daniel or Shay or Hasiel. And we ended up getting a pretty good group, maybe 8 kids, that we took back to the church and we played for the last, it was a short day because we were going to the beach later, but the last half of the day. And Jeremiah got very, very close to Daniel, and they cried when they said goodbye. So that was really, really sweet to watch.
Most of the time, so Pastor Elvis had kind of told us, when neighborhood kids come to the work site, I need a couple of you to break away and like play with them. So, he always said, love on the kids. So when kids come, we would do that. If kids came, we'd hang out. These kids were like, no, we're working. And I'm like, but no, like you have sandals on, you have to have, no, we're working. Like, I couldn't keep them off the site. So I'm like, okay, I guess you can help us. And they worked. They saw what we were doing, and they wanted to help their community too. And so the next day, they're like, what time will you be here? And we're like, we'll be here at 10. And so they were like waiting. We were a little late because Puerto Rico, everything is like time approximate. So it's like we'd say we were leaving at 9, but like we'd all be at the vans at 9, and then like 20 minutes later, our Puerto Rican escorts would be there because they were slow. It was like a time suggestion. It was a cultural thing, but it was like hard. So like we were there late, and they're like, where were you? Like, we have to get started. But they were so adamant about helping us serve. So the first day, we helped them help us with construction. And so we were moving piles of sand to get closer to the mixers. We were shoveling rocks. Like, I didn't show you a picture of it, but like, Che would have her shovel down, and we would like scoop rocks on because it was too hard for her to like shovel it, and then she'd pick it up and get it into the mixer. But the second day, she was leading us through her community, knowing where the kids lived. She knew which doors to knock, right? So, although we didn't knock, but like, she would tell us where to go and where to stop. Amanda would translate for us. And we could not have played with those community kids had she not like kind of vouched for us and said, hey, these people are, like, we're going back to the community center to have some games. And it was like almost like a community party at that last day at lunch, because there were so many kids there. We were all playing. We didn't want to leave. We were literally heading to the beach after a very hot, sweaty week, and we were all kind of bummed that we had to leave because we were having so much fun with them. The first day, Danielle showed up in like shoes that had major holes in them, and we asked him about it. We're like, hey, are those like your shoes? Because Jeremiah was like, I want to get him a pair of shoes if those are his shoes. Like the next day, he wore a pair of Crocs, and he was very proud of his shoes because he's like, no, these aren't my only shoes, And they brought us lollipops. Do you remember that? The second day, they like were like, you're doing such a great job. So like they came with a bag of lollipops that they gave to all of us. Again, just so grateful that we were there, and they showed us so much acceptance and so much love. Even young kids, like they used their gifts and helped us see that side of it. All right, next slide. Oh, so here, we can talk about that one. These are pictures of the community party day with the kids.
Yeah, so these are just some games that we played. We did bracelet making. You can see the strings in there. There was a lot of bracelet making. Amy brought some string, and Charlotte taught us how to use it. And that was a great way to communicate without words. Hasiel wouldn't talk. He was very shy at first. He wouldn't talk to us until we gave him a bracelet. And then he was our best friend. But down at the bottom, we had a little basketball game.
That's when they were throwing the ball at us.
Oh, is that when you were throwing the ball at them?
That was I call that game, Danielle wins, we lose. That was the name of it.
They also had a basketball game that I was not allowed to leave for a very long time because I would get yelled at every time. And then we played, what's that game called? Follow the Leader. We played Follow the Leader. Yeah, it was just a great community bonding activity, and you can see how many kids were there that we just rounded up from the community. So
All right, Stuart was like the best person there. He was rather old. I think he was, how old was he?
He was 66.
65 something. But he was the oldest one on that trip, and he was probably the most talkative. He reminds me of me in 60 years, if to put it to say the least. He told us openly a lot that he had ADHD, and I was like, this is my guy, you know. So we would talk to him, and he would just go off to like a random subject. He's like, we were talking, I forget what we were talking about in the car on the way home one day, and he just started talking about how he got ketchup on his double burger from Arby's or whatever, and it was just so random. And he was just always a good, fun presence to have, and he would lighten everyone's day. And he would always just be around. He was like, he said at the end, we were at the 24-hour restaurant, I don't know what it was called, but he told us that at the first when he saw us, he was like, oh, these kids are gonna be annoying. These kids are gonna be like, not what I wanted this mission trip to be like. And he said he was happy because we were the ones that he connected with most, he said, on this trip, and that really made me happy. So we love Stuart.
I think me and Stuart throughout this trip, the first time I really talked with him, we were in the shower, and he just kept like talking about like how he was deployed in like Korea, and I just like kind of I was like drying off, so I just kind of sat down and I just listened to him talk for, I think it was like 30 minutes about like what like the DMZ is like. Just like Graydon said, he reminded me of like what I might be like when I'm older, you know, just like he's a very talkative, very interesting person. He was a great mix between like the kind of like crazy uncle and like wise old man. Like he would go on about like in the same conversation about conspiracy theories about how the Sphinx was like underwater because of the erosion or whatever. And then in the same conversation, he would then like talk about like, you know, the meaning of life and how like you should like find like a personal connection with God. And he was like, he was a lot. And he's, I don't know. He said that I reminded him of him when he was younger. I don't know if that made any sense. So like, and I think that kind of contributed to our bond. Graydon wants to say something.
He would turn any random conversation into a life lesson in a funny way. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, he would do that. He would do that a ton. And he's just like, and it was never like a lecture. It was always interesting. He's just like, I don't know. He's the person you kind of want to like aspire to be like. He definitely changed me. Like.
On the last day in the 24/7 restaurant, I was freezing, and Stuart gave me and Greta turns to put on his t-shirt because we were so freezing. And he tried to act like he was annoyed by me and Greta, but he loved us like he did.
It's true. I mean, he did say that he thought he was going to have the least interaction with our group because we were so young, and, you know, I'm old. And he was one of the only adults that, okay, so we had to leave at like 4 in the morning to get to the airport on our last day. Everyone else had to leave at like 10, so they weren't awake. I had arranged for a shuttle to take us because, like, you know, they said if you travel outside of these hours, you have to get your own transportation. So we had reserved this shuttle. Like, maybe the first or second day, the drivers were like, you don't need a shuttle, we'll wake up and take you. I'm like, you know, we're leaving at 4 in the morning. And they're like, it's fine. So the 2 drivers woke up. Stuart was the other adult that woke up because he wanted to say goodbye to our group. So he got up at 4 in the morning to see us off. And there were definitely tears. But he was he had such an interesting faith story, ups and downs and all arounds, and he was not shy about any of it, and he was like, he shared it with us as much as you would listen. Do you know what I mean? So he was so generous with his time with us, and I think that was the biggest impact on all of us, was that he didn't like stop talking to us. It was usually we had to stop the conversation with him, right?
Apex, North Carolina.
Yeah, so both of the other congregations that we were served with were from the same city in North Carolina called Apex, which I believe is outside of Raleigh, right? I think. All right, so does anybody have any other people they want to talk about? I don't have slides of people, but I don't want to take away from.
I don't have anyone to really mention in general, but I felt like everybody who was on the trip formed good relationships, and everyone just kind of fit in really well with each other, and no one felt left out. And I had a lot of really, I'll say, deep conversations with people that I didn't expect. Like, I sat down with Stuart for maybe an hour. There was a woman named Mindy that I talked to just about our lives and things we've been through for maybe 2 hours on the beach. I learned about people's stories and their faiths and how different people see the world, and that was really impactful for me. So.
Yeah, even though this slideshow only included 3 people who were the most memorable, everybody else was amazing. There's this kid, Noah, who's basically he was 21, but he looked 15, and he had a brother. Noah was 15, and Isaac was the 21-year-old who looked 15. They looked basically identical, and he was really entertaining to talk to, because he was an animal whisperer, any animal that and there was a ton of animals in Puerto Rico.
Grabbed a salamander, didn't he?
Yeah.
He picked it up and scared
Yeah.
the kids with it.
Yeah, he was it was just kind of effortless for him to I don't know, tame an animal. I think a ton of at one point and I have a video of this. He went into a room with a ton of cats, and he just kind of picked one up, and just they didn't even meow. It was just crazy. And of course there was other people who are also amazing. You talked about Mindy. There's Morgan. She was also really fun to talk to. This trip really gave you that feeling that people, everybody that you met on this trip, you got the feeling that they were living as complex lives as you were living. It kind of made you well, at least for me, it kind of made me think about that, because you usually don't think about that whenever you're just talking to somebody new, that they're living as a complex and deep of a life as you are. I don't know, this trip kind of made me feel that a lot of the time.
Amy, who was that one kid, the youngest kid? Luke. All right, so there's this little kid named Luke. He plays football. And at the beginning of the week, we were saying fun facts about each other. And I was blanking so hard, so I was like, all right, because there's Luke. He already went, we already talked about it before when we first got there. He plays football, and his dad was a wrestling coach. Is that right? His dad's a wrestling coach, and he used to live in Pittsburgh for a year or two, or a while ago. So I was just all right, I played football for a few years back in middle school, throughout middle school and elementary, and Luke came up to me, we were just talking about football for a little bit, and he was just he was just a fun kid. And then his dad, at the last day, we really didn't talk throughout the week, but his dad on the last day was, he was like, you're the kid from Pittsburgh, you're the group from Pittsburgh, and I was like, yeah. So have me a permani sandwich when you get home, and I was like, all right, I'll gladly do that, but yeah, they were a fun little, father and son duo. They were really nice.
Yeah, mean, we could have done a slide for everyone. And actually, we had a 4-hour layover in the airport on the way home. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? That's so long. But we came up with this idea, and we've done this on other mission trips where we take a piece of paper and we write our mission trip teams, like, we each write our name on the top of a piece of paper and we pass it around and say something that we've done or that we've noticed within our team to uplift them, and then everybody gets to take their piece of paper home. So we started to do that, and all of the kids were like, no, we need pieces of paper for everyone. So we wrote 20 pieces of paper with 20 kids, all the grown-ups that were on the trip, but that's how impactful it was. They didn't complain about doing it. It was like, we have time to do this and we want to do this. And so I thought that was pretty awesome.
That is one of my favorite things that our youth group does, is the paper. We just write little sentences or paragraphs about what we appreciate about each other. But the other trip, or the other group from Apex, Mindy told me they got the letters, and every single one of them was in tears.
Yeah,
So
they were a blubbering mess.
yeah, even Stu. So just wanted to tell you guys.
That's awesome. Okay, so there's a few pictures of the work sites. That's us at the final dinner. Oh, thank you. Does it say work sites now? Thank you. That's just a picture of us at the very last night we went out to dinner. We probably sat down at 9:30, so we didn't eat until 11. We didn't get back till 1. Yeah, maybe 12:30. And so we didn't end up going to sleep. By we, I mean you two, because the rest of us at least got an hour of sleep. But yeah, so go down. Thank you. Okay, so this was the house where we poured the foundation. And this is actually a funny picture because there was a hill and then there was a house, and you could tell that it was uninhabited, but the neighbors in that house had never come out to say hi or to see us. Some of the neighbors would let us hang on their property. There was a house right across from this house who had an outdoor bathroom, and they allowed us to use their bathroom all week, and their house was on stilts, so they had a shaded area with a pool table. They allowed us to sit and sort of gather in their area so that we had some shade. I wanted a picture from the hill, and I was like, I'm afraid if I walk up there, I'm going to get in trouble and whatever. So then, Danielle was just like, give me your phone. I'm like, okay, here you go. And he just crawled up there and took this picture. But it was a pretty big structure that we were pouring. And I mean, I didn't think we'd get even half of it done because it was literally you'd mix a batch of concrete, you'd pour it into a wheelbarrow, and then you'd wheel it over. The first day we used a bucket brigade. So then you had buckets that you would scoop the cement out, and then you'd pass the buckets all along and then pour it into the channel. Well, by the second day, we're like, can we expand the path? So instead of having just feet get there, can we make it so that the wheelbarrow can get there? So we worked the first half of the day to kind of improve our process, if you will, so then we could dump the wheelbarrow instead of just dumping the buckets, which was actually a lot faster and easier. But we ended up getting the entire square done and then starting on the part on the inside. Next slide. So this was a house. Who worked on this site? Do you want to talk about that? Because I wasn't on that one.
So this was a house that was maybe a walk away from the community center. It was a lot of laying rebar. There's this guy who, you can see him right there in the soccer jersey. He, just kind of came out of nowhere, like most people did in this trip, and he just, took a power drill and started drilling in rebar and told us and again, he barely spoke English. He just told us in basically gestures how to cut rebar, how to put rebar in the ground, and he just was like, go to work. And I didn't realize this until the end of the day, but that was his house that he was helping build. Like he had such initiative to just like, and obviously like this isn't to say that the other people who had like the other families weren't weren't as helpful, but like the fact that he just like came out and like helped us help him, you know, I don't really know what to say. You know, it's impactful. So I took extra care to make sure I didn't mess up any rebar or anything because I knew he was right over there. Other than that, this was the last day, and you could really kind of feel that like everybody was exhausted. And honestly, I was glad I was here instead of shoveling dirt or rocks. And everybody else probably was too. That's all I have to say about that site, though.
This site was the apartment complex next to Bo's house, and so I think the teams that spent some time there helped transport sand to the second floor so that they could start mixing concrete up on the second floor, and then cleaning up a ton of dirt or like just debris that was all around.
I was there too. It was a lot of trash. Like there was previously we had talked about how Bo had helped construct this entire thing by himself in like 6 months. And nearby, there is this huge trash heap. It was just I'm guessing that they when Bo started construction, people started using this place as like a trash dump or something because it was just like a ton of useless stuff. But our mission wasn't to like clear out the garbage and just throw it away. What we were tasked with is to grab everything that could be revitalized and give it to him so that he could make it into like a new tool. Like he never really threw away anything at that site. So like if it was a rusty shovel head, he would take it, and the next day he would come back and it would be like all shiny and have he really reused everything. You could see how why Bo or how Bo did this in 6 months. It's because he's just so he just had that intuitive sense of efficiency kind of, and I think we could probably use more of that here. He also here, that's where I found a rusty machete, and I signaled to, I asked Bo if I could keep it and take it home and revitalize it, and he just laughed at me and did a motion about machete cutting, and then said "see." So so I'm guessing that meant yes. I don't know. He's just such a generous guy, you know. Nothing really else to say about this.
There was he was trying to get all the dirt out from under this one spot, and me and Luke were getting using a pickaxe, and he had to use a hammer because I guess I don't know why they gave me the pickaxe, but I was using the pickaxe and I gave it to Luke, and the head kind of just fell off of the pickaxe, and I'm just there's no point of me being there at this point because Bo was already telling me to he's pointing me to his house to grab something from it and go back and start working, and then there's the other guys saying there's nothing to do here, and then Bo comes back with a box of tools, and there's 3 pickaxes in there, and he's smiling, and he gives it to us, and it's just funny. So he was yeah, like Henry said, very generous, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was also kind of struck by the resourcefulness in among the Puerto Ricans that we met. To go back to the previous picture of the house with the cinder blocks, I worked there a bit too, and they had run out of cement. This really stuck in my mind because it was kind of crazy, and they just mixed their own cement using a mix of water and I think stones that they had left over, and they mixed it with a shovel, and I was just really struck by that because I think it's just another example of how they really make do and are very resourceful, and I thought that was kind of something that we could use here, you know.
All right, so we're going to try to breeze through the rest of these. This is sort of my top 10 pictures in Puerto Rico to close this out. So number 10 is, no, I got to click it twice. Okay, so number 10 is pet horses. We saw many of the people in the village literally had horses, which blew our mind because that would not be like in their front yard, like pets, like pet horses. And the care that the community gave to everyone's animals, because there were lots of dogs and lots of horses. Are you seeing the horses? Oh, I'm sorry. Was amazing. Number 9 is that basketball is their number 1 sport. So no, go back. So outside of the community center, there was actually a Roberto Clemente. No, I'm talking about that. The red, white, and blue is the Roberto Clemente tribute that was right outside the community center, which of course I had to take a picture of since. Okay, next slide. Number 8, old cars were everywhere. So that was a view of the front yard of the new church. It had the old church van still in it. Gorgeous view, but literally like the church that Bo built that was about 10 minutes away from this village. They are resourceful, and I think that's why they don't throw anything away, even like old vehicles. The next picture there, it says Nutella Frosties rock, and Wendy's should bring them to the U.S. We got to go to Wendy's one night and have Nutella Frosties, which were pretty awesome. Okay, next picture. We saw mango and almond trees. I've never seen an almond tree, so it was pretty cool to actually see what an almond looks like. And then I call this one small frogs and big spiders. The little frog there is like the coqui. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And it only sings when it rains. And so the first 2 days it was triple-digit heat. We were struggling in the heat. We were getting sick. There were, it was hard. That night, it rained. So I actually have a 40-second video I took of like the lightning, and you can hear the frogs, which I can't wait to play for children's worship because we have a book about coquis, that the little frogs. But the next 2 days was kind of cloud cover, so it cooled down. It was still temperatures in the 90s, so it still felt warm, but it wasn't temperatures in the triples. And then we found a giant black spider that I took a picture of, but I don't know what it is, and I don't really want to know. So the next one, and this is a funny picture, that the bottom one of the beach is, the title of that one is Sea Urchins Are Poisonous, and you can ask Henry about that story afterwards if you want. The top picture is everybody can learn to salsa dance. So one of the things that they did is they brought in a salsa instructor and they taught our group how to dance. It was super duper fun. And every single one of us did it. It was awesome. Next slide. This one is called Graydon Can Crack a Coconut. He was the only one that could do it. Like, a lot of people tried.
Wait, can I say one very quick thing? I'm so proud of myself for taking that picture. You have no idea.
We took a walk with Jeremiah just to a gas station to get snacks and drinks, and I found this coconut on the side of the road. And locals told us that there was no way we would be able to get it open because you can only open the green ones. And we found a sharp rock, and we got it, so.
And then the last slide is called Best Food Ever. So that's just pictures of some of the plates that we had all week. The food was phenomenal. So thank you all. I know this went long, but we had so much to say. Does anyone have questions, or does anybody want to say anything else? Oh, yeah.
Amy kind of spoke on this already with the old vehicles part. I just wanted to say, if we haven't said this enough, Puerto Ricans are very, very good at engineering. Puerto Rican engineering is insane. I saw the craziest cars out there. I saw one that I saw like a pickup truck with like the front bumper of a minivan. And like the chassis of, I don't even know what it was, but it definitely wasn't a pickup truck or a minivan. And it was all painted camo green. I saw like a perfectly, like a polished bicycle. I saw cars that definitely shouldn't have like been running, but they were somehow. Again, these people are like, even though they lack like a lot of the materials, everybody there was like incredibly like resourceful and like hardworking. So like even if they don't have the same, like I argue actually because they don't have the same materials as we do, they know how to make the best of everything.
All right, so the last slide just says next steps. You know, I don't remember which one of you said this, but one of you said, I had a large amount of worry, trepidation, I don't know what the right word is, I've always taken our kids on youth trips with other kids. So it's like when you get there, you have fun, it's like a different experience than when you go with adults. And so I was very nervous about how our kids would feel about going on a trip with other adults, especially adults that we didn't know, right? And one of the kids said, this was the best trip ever. I don't ever want to go on a mission trip with kids again. That's how impactful these adults that, like, I really believe every single one of our group of 20 that got there was there for a reason. And one of the things that it just brought to my mind is the power and the absolute blessing that intergenerational connections can provide. And, you know, a church is one of the only places that you can get, like, that intergenerational connection easily. And so this fall, we're definitely going to be more intentionally bringing the awesome adults in our congregation together with youth so that we can develop some of those relationships and we can give us opportunities to connect in the way that we did on this mission trip. I know there's also a lot of our kids that were like, we love this, we want to go back there, and we want to see Pastor Elvis again, and keep the connections that we have with this service partner. So we might, I think the youth committee will be talking a little bit about how or if we can do that moving forward as well. But that's basically it.